let's get back to the tax bill. You mentioned in the last segment, in the last hour, that it has passed the House, and surprisingly, with support from a California delegation that is going to be significantly raising taxes on a vast amount. I mean, I haven't seen the actual sort of numbers, but I suppose somebody might be able to break those down at this point. How many people will see significant effective tax increases because of the Republican bill, which may provide for the elimination of state and local tax deductions? And you attributed it to the power of of Kevin McCarthy from California. I mean, what do you think these folks are looking at? Or is it just like they were convinced? Is it they feel like they're going to get drowned in a wave anyways in California, regardless of how they vote? Or is it that they feel like we've done nothing, so we can't even turn out our own voters?
Well, I don't know what they're thinking, but I really, really would not be surprised if at least many of those who voted for that, those California Republicans who voted for it, are seeing this blue wave and understand that they're about to lose their seats, and this was basically a job application to join whatever lobbying swamp firm is going to be benefiting from these tax cuts. I hate to be that cynical, but this really makes little sense. I mean, they can't possibly think they're going to retain their seats by saying, I just passed a tax cut that's going to hurt my constituents. I can't see what their logic is there. So, I'm going the cynical route and assuming that they are basically, sort of accepting the fact that they're going to lose and are just kind of, trying to please their donors, which, as we know, we've been reading, account after account from various officials saying that their donors are adamantly telling them they have to pass this tax cut or there will be hell to pay. It's not coming from the people. It's not coming from their constituents. Nobody's making phone calls and demanding that the tax cut be passed because, gosh, that corporate tax rate is just way too high. This is coming from the money people. So I'm assuming that for a lot of these people, that is what they're doing. They're making deals and saying, hey, I'll vote for you here, but I hope you remember me after 2018 if this doesn't go well. I mean, I know that's cynical, but that's I can't think of any other reason.
I mean, look, this is the reason why Republicans get into government. I mean, they don't, I don't think there was any meaningful attachment to any other part of any of the Republican agenda to the extent that I can come up with one, beyond repealing Obamacare. But they all had a chance to vote to repeal Obamacare, just like they did in 2015. And they chose not to do it this time. So there's real reason to believe that it's not even just a question of them getting a job, although I suspect that's a big part of it, because there's value in being a former congressman in terms of like these lobbying jobs. But I think there's also probably this is their raison d'etre, right? I mean, this is what else if not we heard those stories of Paul Ryan sitting around a keg in college. According to him, dreaming of cutting Social Security and Medicare to do a Ronald Reagan style permanent tax cut. And, this is their one opportunity. I happen to believe that this is going to pass. I think this week it was clear that when the CBO scored the bill that you were going to have millions of people lose their health insurance. You were going to see cuts on Medicaid. And I think, for a moment, I thought maybe they're going to roll back the ACA mandate, which, of course, is going to really start a death spiral, perhaps, in the exchanges. But I think they're just going for broke. And I think they're going to pass this.
I do, too. I think they're going to pass it. And, for whatever their motives, I agree with you that this is, I mean, they're fundamentalists on this, right? I mean, they might as well be talking about, the apocalypse is happening on a certain date. This is how absolutely rigid they are in their belief that tax cuts are the answer to everything. They believe truly that tax cuts are the most meaningful thing any government can do. And there isn't anything behind it. It's clear they never even thought it through on how to do it. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yep.
Here, look at this tax bill. It's a mess. It's not, I mean, this isn't something, I assumed that they could pull some tax legislation off the shelf
Right.
that was sitting there waiting with everything lined out, and they would cut this and they'd raise they'd be able to slice it and dice it with all the rules within, the bird rule and all the rest of that stuff, that they had that all planned out. They wouldn't need to go to the parliamentarian because they already knew how that was going to work out. And the CBO score would be meaningless because they would have already run the numbers, right? I mean, this is their thing. This is what they live for. And yet, look at it. It's an absolute mess. It's no better than the Obamacare repeal, which they didn't have any excuse for that either. But, what do they know about health care, right? So, fine. They didn't know how to do that. This is tax cuts. They didn't know how to do that either. This is just some rigid, dogma that they have, must cut taxes, must deliver for donor. And there's nothing more to it than that. There's nothing meaningful within this tax legislation other than we're cutting taxes for rich people because they do believe that rich people, if they get their taxes cut, everything will be fine. That's their belief. That's the ideology behind it. And beyond that, this is just basically slash and burn, do whatever it takes, and they're going to ram it through. I agree with you. I will be very surprised if this one falls apart. It'll be close, of course.
Yep.
But I will be very, very surprised if at the end somebody comes up and does the John McCain thumbs down thing and that's it. This one, I think this is what they live for.
All right. Well, we got to take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about this a little bit more because people should know what these supposed tax cuts involve because let me put it this way. If you are anticipating getting an inheritance of over $10 million, this may make you happy. But if you're not, I've got some bad news for you. We will come back and talk about that more. I'm talking to the great Heather Parton, Digby from the blog Hullabaloo. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio.